So how is season 11 so far? How you guys liking it? Me personally, my opinion, first impressions, this season's pretty awesome. And that is from a couple unintentional bugs, but also really good decision making from Bungie. In terms of content added this season, the dungeon is always Destiny's strongest content offering, so this season is no exception. The dungeon's amazing, I think it's the best one yet, and I recommend going in totally blind, which is why I'm choosing not to use it as background gameplay. Seriously, the dungeon alone would be worth the cost of the expansion, but the thing is, it's included for free. So even if you're a free player in Destiny, give the dungeon a shot. And I'm curious to see what more is coming down the pipeline. But for now, I'm already satisfied with my purchase. So the topics that I want to cover in today's video involve skill-based matchmaking, weapon and armor sunsetting, and, of course, power level grinding. Since the background gameplay is appropriate for talking about skill-based matchmaking, I will start there. This is a competitive match, and you already know I have the sword hilts out. Third-person peeking is plaguing the Crucible, it always has, but until recently as the population dwindles and as skill-based matchmaking is cranked up, you play a lot of players that are very competent with the game, and they understand that sword hilting is the best choice to win a match. This devolves high-skill matches from a very fast and intense gameplay to a snail's pace where both teams are too afraid to do anything and would rather rely on the more consistent method of winning by using the intellect stat, which charges your character's super ability, to just wait in the back of the map until you have a super, and then roll the dice on a super fight. To stay ahead of my comment section, because I'm still replying to this day, yes, way back in Destiny 1, I popularized sword hilting, but that doesn't mean I was never championing its removal. A third-person option has no place in a first-person shooter. This is not an argument. This will make people leave the game if it continues. You are getting free information at zero cost. I'll repeat that. Free information at zero cost while moving. An emote locks you in place. A sword hilt, you can move around with it and still use your abilities, line up a crosshair for sniper rifle shots, etc. The more competent players in the game will realize how to abuse it to its absolute potential. While I'm still not a fan of supers and emotes and whatnot knocking you in third person, the compromise cannot be made with sword hilts in particular and emotes in particular because you don't give up anything to use those. With a class ability like a hunter dodge, you lose the dodge and you take the time of the dodge animation. The same for the rift and the same for the barricade. Again, staying ahead of the comments here, someone's going to say, this wasn't a problem in Destiny 1. Well, my answer to that is we all sucked at playing Destiny 1, and people got a lot better at the game. People understand how to abuse a game mode without objectives. And even if there were objectives, it's still free information at no cost. Think of the amount of resources to make yourself a better player out there compared to a couple years ago. Right now, there are so many wonderful content creators with fantastic guides, and the game itself is just a smoother experience, and the average skill has went through the roof. So someone just logging on right now gets exposed to a totally different type of approach from the enemy compared to years ago. This all ties back to skill-based matchmaking because there's a skill threshold needed to abuse third-person mechanics and sniper rifles, sometimes both at the same time. And since skill-based matchmaking forces top percent players to match top percent players, almost everybody in that bracket can abuse the game to a point where there's no counterplay. For example, a couple seasons ago, the Last Word, which is an exotic hand cannon that fires faster than other primaries, was pretty easy to use for a certain skill threshold of player, to the point where if somebody used it and was good enough with it, it forced everybody in the lobby to switch to it to stand a chance. And because of skill-based matchmaking, this happened almost every match. In today's PvP, the same can happen with sword hilts, sniper rifles, and Antea swords. So I say all this to illustrate the point that at a certain skill threshold, the game dilutes into just one intensity and just one playstyle. Removal of skill-based matchmaking has unlocked the rest of the game and severely toned down the intensity in casual matches, which is the worst part of it all, is it doesn't matter what playlist you search, all of them had skill-based matchmaking, except the one hidden away in the corner, and that's supposed to satisfy 0.1% of the population in my bracket. I'm sure you can already anticipate the problem here. If skill-based matchmaking searches within a bracket, then that severely reduces the possible population, especially when all the players are split between so many nodes. As a result, this means to find a player with appropriate skill, the connection parameter expands so far that I'm searching players on the other side of the world, which in a first-person shooter is a terrible experience no matter what the skill level of the player. So I'll continue staying ahead of the comment section. Someone's gonna say, all skilled players want to do is stomp on noobs. And while that may be true for some, for most of the population, they just want to have adequate connections in a first-person shooter. On either side of the coin, whether you're for skill-based matchmaking or against, it's selfish in some degree to want either. For the people who want skill-based matchmaking, it sounds a lot to me that you're saying because someone is good, they should have a terrible matchmaking experience in terms of connection because you cannot take the personal responsibility to improve your player skill enough to enjoy the game the way you want to. And then some of these players have the audacity to complain about lack of content or challenge in a game with PvP. So that sort of boggles my mind because the whole point of playing PvP is to improve. But then on the other side, people arguing for skill-based matchmaking, it sounds a lot like whining, like they're afraid of real competition. But then again, is competition necessary in a casual mode? Maybe you come from the perspective of you're a new player and want to play players of similar skill so you can have a better chance of improving. That's called the zone of proximal development, an education term for basically saying that if there's too great of a challenge, you don't really learn anything because you don't even know what your mistakes are. I totally agree with that sentiment, but there is one caveat here, and that is the competitive playlist has skill-based matchmaking enabled. So at any point, if you're having a bad time in one of the other connection-based matchmaking playlists, you can just search in the competitive playlist and guarantee to match players of similar skill level. And the reason that this works better than the former system is because of the ratios. Having one connection-based matchmaking playlist does not work in a sea of skill-based matchmaking, but having one skill-based matchmaking playlist in a sea of connection-based matchmaking works entirely better just because of population numbers. So the long and short of skill-based matchmaking is that there is no perfect solution, but this seems like the best compromise. And wanting the extreme opposite end of either solution is just a very selfish take. So take a step back, think about how much you like Destiny, how much you plan to invest in the game, how many resources there are for personal improvement in the game, and really think about it. Do you anticipate yourself becoming good at the game? Because then, if you champion the skill-based matchmaking severe system, you will eventually be one of those top players unable to play the game because of either degenerate strategies or just simply connection. Myself personally, I have a couple criticisms of the current skill-based matchmaking set. I would say that on that lower end of the bell curve, that very small percent of new players, maybe there should be a personal playlist for them or a special matchmaking parameter for them. Because there straight up is no chance that even going to the competitive playlist that they will have a good time majority of the time. Another criticism of connection-based matchmaking is that if there is a group of 6 players in the same fire team, they will typically win by a wide margin. So it would be nice if there was a freelance playlist where you could guarantee solo queue and only match other solo queuers. And this still enables, in the team playlist, for people to search with their friends of all different skill varieties without one talented player forcing the other 5 to have a terrible time. Even despite the connection-based matchmaking criticisms, I still think this is the most realistic and fair system so far, and it doesn't seem like there is a better solution. Now, moving on to the next topic, this is AFK Forge farming. This means that I am doing nothing right now, and my character will die, be in the respawn screen. When this activity ends, I get an engram, and I can turn that engram in for powerful gear, which increases my overall power level. Essentially, this meant that I could leave my console on all night and get a stack of engrams to then turn in the next morning. So I'm making progress in Destiny without actually playing the game. You might not like to hear this from me, but I thought this bug was more of a feature. This enhanced my playtime, my play experience in Destiny 2, because to raise power level normally, you have to do your weekly reset, which is a couple Crucible matches, a couple strikes, a couple Gambit matches, some raids, some nightfalls, etc. Basically the same old content we've done for years at this point. So why would you even want to raise your power level to begin with, someone might ask? To answer that, you raise your power level so you can do the new content more comfortably, or you can farm the new content faster to acquire better gear that maybe increases your enjoyment of the game. Because to me, creating loadouts and enhancing builds is the game to me. So again, for me, having a high power level means that I get to my endgame build a little bit faster and go play in the areas of Destiny that I find most enjoyable instead of having to do chores to level up my power. Yeah, you heard that right. I referred to those activities as chores. PvP lately, not really feeling like a chore to me, but I know it's there for some, so I'm still gonna leave that in there. But I think universally we can agree that Gambit feels like a chore. And the reason for that, and we've been saying this for a year now asking for these changes, is that heavy ammo and the invader set make the mode play terribly. It is not fun. With that in mind, I had a choice. I could either slog through activities I'm not too excited about doing, or AFK Destiny, sit in the Forge doing nothing, and do something more productive with my time, like file taxes, edit a video, mention a sponsorship. No, I'm just playing. But seriously, this bug enabled me to play more of the parts of Destiny that I enjoy and less of the parts that I do not. Keep in mind, this game does not have trading, so the power level system overall is just arbitrary. I don't even know why it's there. I do recognize though that there is a different perspective that may think AFK farming ruins the integrity of approaching challenging content, as if because you're a low power level, you have to grind for your weeklies, and since you're a lower power level, the new content is significantly more challenging. And that is partially true, but keep in mind, I did the dungeon, which is the pinnacle of the current content offering, at around 1020. So, is it really necessary? I'd be much more in favor of a slot leveling system or just a flat difficulty option and abandoning power leveling altogether. Like I said, it feels arbitrary, especially considering the comparison to other MMOs. But as usual, this isn't really up to me. It's up to Bungie to decide on the identity of Destiny and stick with it. Rip off the band-aid, get rid of the other aspects of the game that don't fit within that identity, because the lingering elements really annoy players that enjoy a particular aspect of Destiny. I will recognize though that one of the greatest strengths of Destiny is a compromise between PvE and PvP, and be able to take something out of one area and bring it to the other. I think that's very cool and unique, and to me, that's kind of the identity of Destiny. It's the gunplay, the movement and ability mechanics in an arena shooter format. That is where Destiny is special to me. The gear building, the loadout building. Not the power grind, but if they wanted to do that, again, it's an identity shift away. To me, the power level system is just artificial extension of the grind, and I think more emphasis should be put on improving the quality of life of core modes like Crucible, like Gambit, like Strikes, etc., so that those are enjoyable to play even without the necessity to improve your power level. And then if you slap that artificial grind on top of it, it'll be a little less painful. Though I'll say I'm much more in favor of just not doing it at all. I mean, one of the main criticisms of choosing to AFK is that you're ruining the grind. You're going to get rid of all the content too quickly. But like, really? You're talking to a dude who voluntarily spends most of his time in the Crucible. That's where the majority of my playtime in Destiny is. So me saving a couple weekly resets of power grinding is just more time I can spend in the Crucible. So this bug is a feature. I'm so glad it happened, and I'm so disappointed it got fixed so quickly. I know that just because on one side of the studio they fix one thing, that doesn't mean that it takes away from the time to fix another thing. But seriously, the AFK farm gets fixed, the power leveling gets fixed, but the Crucible anti-cheat, Trials of Osiris, seem to be left in the dust. I'm not saying that they're correlated, but it's not a good look when one of these seems to be very positive. And that's about where I'm comfortable leaving the discussion of AFK power leveling. And if we have a difference of opinion here, just leave it to difference of opinions. Okay, the final topic to talk about is weapon sunsetting and how Bungie has done a pretty good job of implementing it so far in Season 11. Look at what you see in the background right now. I'm going to the Drifters area, and there's this new oven where you can focus your umbral engrams to curb the RNG to get specific loot out of these engrams. That right there is incredible. And I did the math. Check this out. So when looking at the selection of things at the oven, you have the option of a Dredgen focused umbral engram, and that has 4 possibilities in it. A rocket launcher, a sidearm, a gnawing hunger auto rifle, which is amazing in PvE and always has been, and it's pretty good in PvP. But take a look at the next tier below, where you can curb the RNG even further. You can decide to say, hey, I can go for just rifles. I can go for just 2 gambit weapons. So now, since I've limited my loot pool, how realistic is it to acquire a good gnawing hunger for PvE? Well, ideally, I would recommend Subsistence, which reloads your magazine for getting a kill, and Swashbuckler or Rampage, because you could just keep killing stuff and ramping up the damage. And to get that specific role, you have to curb the RNG, which is 50%, you have to get the Subsistence, which is 20%, then you have to get Swashbuckler or Rampage, which is 40%. And so this ultimately amounts to a 1 in 25 chance, and since it only takes about 3 minutes to run a Nightmare Hunt to then get an Umbral Engram to focus it, the realistic amount of time you would grind for this gun is about 1 hour and 15 minutes, which is phenomenal. If sunsetting is like this for every gun, that's incredible, because the previous alternative to have this gun forever instead of having it go away in a year is 17 hours of Reckoning. But again, you have that gun forever. And I spent those 17 hours going for that exact role to then later have to acquire the exact same gun in a later season, which that role would last a year. So that's my main criticism of sunsetting in PvE. The time I spent to acquire things is just wasted. And the worst part is they're the exact same perks. If Bungie would just make it so that if they reintroduce old gear with the same perk set, I get to just infuse my old one and skip that 1 hour and 15 minutes of wasted time. Now, not every new item is available in this Umbral Oven, as I'm going to call it. You can't really curb your RNG to acquire, let's say, a Toil in Trouble shotgun. To get this exact same role, it's quite a different number here. It would take about 42 hours of intentional play to get the RNG necessary to get this role. Or you could maybe roll the dice and try to acquire it passively, which is my recommendation, but the point is, the same item is reintroduced later, and even though I already have the role I want, I can't use it. That's a problem. The PvE problems pale in comparison to the PvP problems that sunsetting might cause. For example, Bungie said that they are trying to create powerful and standout gear in future seasons. And if power level is not enabled in PvP, that means that same powerful and standout gear can be used forever in normal PvP. So if they experiment with something as strong as a Recluse, that means PvP is stuck with that Recluse forever. I don't really have the solution here, but neither does anybody else really. I just want to bring this up because it is a big criticism of sunsetting that no one seems to be able to answer, but is still championing for the system anyway. Every Destiny player plays Destiny for a different reason. Sunsetting definitely damages some of the aspects of Destiny that I like most. But I will say I give credit where credit's due. Some of the new systems to curb RNG are fantastic, and I hope Bungie expands upon them in the future. Maybe even reevaluating the power level grind at the same time. Imagine if there was flat difficulty options and guaranteed rewards from those difficulty options. Maybe a different tier of engram that can be curved even further. Because for me, getting a guaranteed good reward is a drastic improvement of play because it's less time grinding and more time using. So Fellwinter's Lie? Yeah, kiss goodbye 5 weekends of Mindbender's ambition farming, and I didn't even get the role I want. Meanwhile, Fellwinter strolls along and drops a 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10 shotgun for everybody to use, thus making shotgun duels in the Crucible universally more consistent, making the game more fun to play. Things like that, big thumbs up from me. Maybe that ruins, quote unquote, something to grind for in Destiny, but to me, having fun in the game is the thing to grind for, and improving in PvP, to me, is having fun. You definitely noticed I've been playing a lot of a different game on my channel. This is Phantasy Star Online 2. I made an overview video that will be in the description in case you missed it, but this is my main PvE game now. I still will play Destiny for PvP, and as far as a competitive PvP game goes, I will probably pick up a fighting game in the future, but that doesn't mean I'm going to slow down on Destiny content. That just means that I've always wanted a PvE challenge from Destiny, and it just has been a little slow getting there. So in the meantime, I'm going to play games like this, and I will cover games like this, and maybe you might find some enjoyment from it as well. After all, Phantasy Star Online is the reason that I got into Destiny in the first place because of how many similarities the game has, and how Phantasy Star overall has influenced the entire genre of MMOs in ways that you wouldn't know if you didn't play the game. So this means overall my approach to Destiny now is a lot more casual, especially with sunsetting. I talked about this in past videos, but essentially this is solidifying my decision to take a very casual approach because I'm not quite sure that my time is respected in Destiny. So I would rather just borrow an account that has a god role than go obtain the god role myself because, again, I could be spending 40 plus hours going for something just to have it go away in a year. Or I could be very unlucky and get something 9 months into its life cycle and only get to use it for 3 months when my channel is kind of built on game mastery. Thank you for watching the video. I hope that some of the discussion points were compelling, and have a great day.